your regularly scheduled update on white women pretending to be ethnic. This from the New York Post. A progressive activist, Raquel Evita Saraswati. She is a Muslim progressive activist. She is an Arab woman. She is a Latina. She has made this ethnic identity part of her activism for 20 years. And it turns out, you're going to be shocked to hear this, she's just a regular white lady. Raquel Evita Saraswati, 39 years old, was just outed by The Intercept for pretending to be South Asian, Latina, and Arab. She spoke to Boston.com in 2004 about her upcoming wedding, saying she wanted to do something to respect her Arab and Latin culture. Actually, her name is Rachel Elizabeth Seidel. She's referred to in that article as Raquel Evita Seidel. I guess she's dropped the Seidel. Now she's Saraswati. And her mother, Carol Peroni, says that it's all BS and her family is white as the driven snow. I call her Rachel. I don't know why she's doing what she's doing. I'm as white as the driven snow, and so is she. I'm German and British. Her father was Calabrese Italian, which, to be fair, is a racially liminal group of people. I happen to be Calabrese as well. She's chosen to live a lie, and I find that very, very sad. What is Saraswati's job? Do you think she's a truck driver? No. Do you think she's an electrician? No. She is, of course, the Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Culture Officer of a Philadelphia-based group, the American Friends Service Committee, which is a leftist Quaker group that fights violence, inequality, and oppression. She's the latest Rachel Dollaz, but there have been many Rachel Dollaz since then. Lots of white women, usually women, pretend to be other ethnic groups. Why is that? Because Exhibit Z, exhibit number 10,576, that white privilege does not exist. It does not exist, certainly as our culture pretends that it exists. You don't get special social points for being white. In fact, white people are the only group in our culture that one can legally discriminate against and socially insult, exclude, ostracize, where it's actually encouraged by our culture to attack white people. And so, white people are pretending to be other races. It's just basic incentives. The proof of the pudding is in the tasting. You don't see many, if any, black people pretending to be white people. You don't see many Arab people or Middle Eastern people pretending to be white people. In fact, in the US Census, Arab and Middle Eastern people used to be classified as white. Then there was a movement over the last 10 years to reclassify that group as Middle Eastern and North African, MENA. Linda Sarsour, the leftist activist, was one of the people pushing this. Why was she pushing this? If there were a privilege associated with being white, don't you think that the people who were already lumped in as being white would want to remain white? They're not doing that, though. Why? Because being white is the only group with which there is not a social privilege associated. So they're trying to be some other group. And yet, if you went out and you polled 100 people on the street in New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Washington, D.C., if you polled any CNN watchers, so I guess you'd have to go to the airport for that, and you said, hey, which group is the most socially privileged? You would hear a lot of people say, oh, it's white people. It's white people. It's the opposite of reality. So often, we can just be hypnotized by the popular culture. But this is the proof that it's all BS. Speaking of privilege, speaking of white privilege, a gang member in LA is a Korean guy. This Korean guy comes with his family to America as a kid. He then joined a gang and committed murder, and then he went to a prison for that, and now he's being deported because he got out of prison, which is absurd. The guy committed murder. He should at the very least be in prison for the rest of his life. But, okay, fine, let's say for let's say it were a legitimate reason for which he was granted some clemency here, some mercy, he was allowed out of prison. He is being deported. He's not an American citizen. He is a gangster and a murderer. And so he's being deported. This is being reported in the New York Times, or I'm sorry, the LA Times, as a kind of a sad story. This guy, Justin Chung. Justin Chung was brutally honest, admitting that it took him years to feel remorse. He wanted to share his complicated journey, and he was rallying support for another fight. Because of the murder he committed when he was 16, he had lost his chance to apply for a green card. He's on the verge of being deported to South Korea, the country he left as a 2-year-old. Especially being Korean, I do want to be private for my family, said Chung, 33, but I have to fight. I have to do something before I get deported. No, you don't. Just go away. Go away. You're very, very lucky that you were allowed out of prison because of the Democrat policies of people like Gavin Newsom. You're very, very lucky that you were not executed when you committed that murder in cold blood. When he committed that murder, he was in a gang. He thought he was killing people of a rival gang. He just didn't like the cut of their jib or the kind of clothes they were wearing. So he went to murder them. And it turned out the people that he murdered were not in any gang at all. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this cold-blooded psycho murdered them. So now he's getting deported. And now that's the sob story. That's the sob story. That is how much our culture favors immigrants, the foreigners, the people who they look different, they sound a little different. That's how insanely our culture favors them, is that they can come here, literally commit murder, and they're still the sympathetic characters in the story. You remember when Donald Trump in 2016, he said, my followers love me so much I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I wouldn't lose a single vote. And the left used this line. They said, oh my goodness, this is cultish behavior. This is horrible. Can you imagine what a terrible country we're living in where that sort of statement can be true? Well, it's not exactly true of Trump. His followers are pretty loyal, but he was exaggerating for comic effect. That is true when it comes to the libs and immigration. They could literally murder people. They do regularly murder people. And the libs will not lift a finger to do anything about it. In fact, they will lift a finger to try to stop these poor, put-upon murderers from being deported. The rest of the show starts now. You don't want to miss it. Go to dailywire.com/Knowles. Use code Knowles at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.